All right, folks. Well, let me congratulate you for taking the bold action to actually even find out about this information. So, again, I want to start with the disclaimer that I'm not a tax lawyer and I'm not a CPA, but the source from which I got this information is a legal scholar, and he is the author of a book that he wrote called Cracking the Code: The Fascinating Truth About Taxation in America. And that's the basis from where I got this information. And the reason I'm making this video is because, like a legal scholar, the book is very dense, and even on his YouTube videos on YouTube, the language is very dense and it's not easy to read. And so I want to just share this, put it in a way that's easier to consume, that's easier to understand. It just makes it much more simpler without all of the extra stuff. And if you desire, you can go read the book and get the extra information and the extra justification in the real, and see how legal it is. So that's the first thing, right? I wanted to get that disclaimer out of the way. Now, and like I said, the source from which I got this, his name is Peter Hendrickson. He's, again, like I said, a legal scholar, and he's studied all of this. And so that's where the source is coming from. This is not me just blowing off my head. This is not me coming with some weird tax strategy that the IRS might find out, and then we'll have to owe back taxes or something like that. No, this is what I'm going to share with you is the legal, constitutional truth about the taxes in the United States of America. Okay. So there's a few things that we're going to cover real quick. And the first one is understanding custom definitions of common words. So in the tax code, there's a few words, 5 in particular, that we're going to talk about that have custom definitions when it comes to their use in the tax code, which oftentimes, and the big scheme has been that has fooled the majority of the U.S. population, is to willingly volunteer their income as taxable, when in reality it's not. Because now understand, let me make this very clear too. This is not a way to avoid taxes. Understand that income tax is completely legal and constitutional, but what has happened is that it's been misapplied, right? It's been a huge scheme that has deceived the American people into convincing them that their income, their revenue, their earnings are taxable, when in reality, the majority of people's incomes are not taxable, which, again, that word income is one of the words that we're going to define. So we're going to go cover those right now, right? The first words are wages, income, and earnings. These 3 words in the U.S. tax code have a very specific meaning and refer to remuneration or pay for a very specific activity. So what defines wages? What's the custom definition for wages, incomes, and earnings in context of the U.S. tax law and the Constitution? Well, it states so income, according to the tax law and the custom definition, is revenue or earnings that you've generated as pay or remuneration for public office. There's 3 categories or activities that qualify income as taxable. Okay, so these are the only 3. If you don't fall into any one of these 3 categories, you do not have to pay taxes. Your taxes or your income is not taxable. Okay, your income is not income as defined by the tax law. Okay, so the first one is if you hold a public office. If you're a president, if you're a senator, if you're a judge, or anything that has to holds a public office, any pay in exchange for that function, which is a privilege, right? It's not a right to operate at those public offices. Those are a privilege. And so that any remuneration or pay from a public office is taxable income. Okay. The second category is if you are a high level, or if you're an executive, or if you're an executive for a government-owned company, which means the government owns the majority share of that company, and you are an executive within that company, then your income is taxable. And also, government and state employees, also their incomes are taxable as well, because, again, it has to do with public function, right? And then the third category, which is the last category of people whose incomes are actually taxable, is if you have a business and you have a contract with the government. So whether you're a provider or a supplier for the government, if the government pays your company to fulfill anything, then that revenue is taxable. Now, if you are not in any one of these 3 categories, again, if you don't hold public office like president, senator, or judges, or anything along those lines, if you don't, or if you're not a public employee, if you aren't an executive on a government-owned company, And if you aren't an owner for a company that provides services or goods for the government, then your income, your revenue is not taxable. So what does that mean? That means the vast majority of people, employees, people who, regular workers, and both entrepreneurs and business owners, the majority of people, 95% of people, income is not taxable. So that's the first thing we got to understand, right? That definition of wages, income, and revenue. Second definition is the word includes or including. When you see the word includes or including in a tax document, in a tax code, in a tax law, it speaks to specifically the people, what's listed after that including. So it could be like including, president or judges and senators, things along those lines. But it does not include anything outside of what's listed following that including or includes, okay? So whenever you're seeing tax law, whenever you're reading it, if you see includes, understand that whatever comes after that is only what that applies to, what was before that applies to, okay? Second thing is United States. Understand that the United States, in reference to the tax codes, is talking about the government entity, if you will. Person in the U.S. tax code is also in reference to a government employee, or as we spoke already, someone who works in a public office or fulfills that role, that function, right? And employer is the government, right? The state or public office, again, that is the employer. An employee is anyone who works for the government directly in any role or function in the ones that we had mentioned previously, right? The three categories we just talked about. So those are the employees that their revenue, their income is taxable, as we spoke about, because that payment is defined as in the tax law as wages, but only in those categories. Again, if you hold a public office or are a state employee, if you hold a public office like a president or a senator or judge, or if you're a state employee, if you are an executive in a government-owned company, or if you own a company and provide services or products to the U.S. government. Those are the only three people whose incomes are taxable, okay? It's very important that you understand that. Okay, so that's the first part, the custom definitions that deceive the vast majority of people into thinking that in the tax law the words mean the same as outside as their common use, like the word income or the word revenue or the word wages outside of the tax law can speak to everybody's earnings, to everything, whatever you produce. But in specifically the context of the tax law, it only applies to those three categories of people that we mentioned already, okay? So that's the first part, understanding those custom definitions. And once you understand that, almost all of your tax questions get resolved. Almost all of your inquiries or your doubts about taxable income or your questions, what they might be, kind of go away because you understand. Well, if the income that I'm getting in isn't actually taxable according to the tax law, then everything else around the tax law, the tax code is irrelevant to you because it doesn't apply to your revenue or income generating activities. Do you understand? So that's very important. So now let's talk about educated filing, okay? Now this is, again, I'll make the disclaimer, I'm not a tax lawyer and I'm not a CPA, right? But the source I got this information from is a legal scholar who has been doing this for over 10 years and who has helped, thousands of people get, millions of dollars back from the government that the government did not have a right to at the first place. So understanding, when you file a 1040, you can do so, but understand that. So let me put it this way. Essentially, if you're not one of those three categories of people, then your income, right, on filings is zero. Now, again, I don't know you personally. You may have government contracts. You may be working. You may hold a public office. I don't know. But if you do not hold a public office, you aren't a state or government employee. You do not work for, you're not an executive in a government-owned company, and you're not a supplier or a provider, a company that provides or supplies for the U.S. government, then your revenue, your income is, in tax context, zero, okay? And so it's important to understand that. Also, so when you file that, you can do that correctly. Now, if you want to review the filings you had before, let's say you already submitted a W-2 or whatnot, you can correct that with Form 4852. And there's a particular phrase that you want to share, that I'll share with you in a minute, that you want to put so that the IRS understands that you are an educated filer, and you're not just trying to, and you're not going to let them mislead you anymore. Okay, so it's important. And then 1099, this is you want to get copies of those so that, in the process of filing. And now you might be wondering, well, if I don't have to pay taxes, why am I still filing? Because here's what's going to happen. Because all of your federal taxes and your state taxes and the Medicare and the healthcare and all of that, and Social Security, those are taxes that are not legal for you if your income is not taxable, right? According to the U.S. tax law. So what happens is that each year you file, your income is zero, but since they took those taxes out anyway, you have the right to get them back, okay? And so it's important to have that through this process. So those are the three forms that you're going to basically need, the 1040, and you're going to just file it with the understanding that if you are not in those three categories of people, that you do not have, that you do not have income or wages according as defined to the tax law. Okay, so that's important to understand that. And I got my notes here, so bear with me. And so here's this key phrase, and take a moment. You might want to pause the video when I write this, when I say this, because this is an important aspect that you will file in your tax, and when you go to file, so the government knows that you are an informed and educated filer that's not going to go along and get strung along to voluntarily give up your hard-earned money, right? So this key phrase, which you have to put on your documents, when you file, is: the amounts provided by the payer under wages, in quotation marks, are incorrect. The amounts listed there do not qualify as wages, in quotation marks, as defined under Title 26 USC Section 3401 and 3121. Now, those two sections are the sections where it clearly defines those custom definitions of those words that apply directly and specifically during tax context, right? So it's very important that you keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to give you a couple bonus notes just kind of as a heads up, because the reality is you and I both know the government isn't going to want to give up the stronghold they have on the population, right? Especially if you're earning if you're a business owner and you're owning and you are paying a significant amount in taxes, they're probably not going to want to just give it up really easy. So this, as a heads up, right? The IRS may kick and they moan and they might whine and they might even, make some groundless threats and maybe even delay the payment that they owe you. But at the end, they'll still have to pay out because they have no legal ground, since your income does not probably, if you're not one of those three categories, your income does not qualify as taxable as income as defined in the tax law. So folks, I hope this brief video was informative. If you'd like some more information, just go ahead and fill in the form below and actually set up a call with me so that we can talk and we can be more specific about your particular situation and how you could go about benefiting and really taking back ownership and liberty of your income, of your revenue, and only paying what's constitutionally correct in taxes. If your income is not taxable, you should not be paying that tax, right? This is not some sort of tax scheme, avoid tax scheme. No, just understand you now have the truth about what the U.S. tax law applies to, and if you are not doing those taxable activities, then your income is not taxable and you do not have to pay taxes. So go ahead and schedule a call, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.